Joining me now is Aswan Subsang, White House reporter for the Daily Beast, and Marie McAvoy, a former federal prosecutor, and Evan Siegfried, a Republican strategist. Aswan, let me begin with you, if I may. In addition to the president's tweets, in person, the White House and its surrogates have really gone on an attack all throughout the day. Watch this.
Comey will be forever known as a disgraced partisan hack.
You know, I'm disappointed in Jim Comey. I'll be honest with you, this book should be on the fiction shelf.
You're a pompous, egotistical, patronizing, condescending, holier-than-thou political operative.
I think this book is salacious. I think when you read it, he discredits himself.
Have you read it?
The very fact. No, I haven't read it.
All right, so today a Washington Post ABC poll shows that more Americans find Comey, believe it or not, more believable than the president. So let's talk a little bit about how effective you think this strategy has been from the White House against Comey. How would you rate it, Aswan?
Well, I'm not sure how I would rate it in terms from an A+ to an F-, but in terms of some of the footage you were just showing there, a lot of that, not just within the White House, but without it, is, if not under the direct direction from the President of the United States himself, is done with his sometimes explicit blessing. That first clip you showed of Sarah Huckabee Sanders at that Friday afternoon White House press briefing, according to people I've been speaking to in the White House over the past couple of days, the President had a meeting with Sarah Sanders in the Oval Office shortly before she went on, as he usually does. But what made this meeting in the Oval Office different from others is that President Trump specifically told Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders to basically tear James Comey apart when she got in front of the cameras, to emphasize that he is, by their estimation, a leaker, a shameless self-promoter, or someone who's trying to line his own pockets with this book and subsequent tour. So to basically get in the mud with the fired FBI director as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, it seems like the
regard.
president as well is getting into the mud a little bit with some of the terminology he's been using, like slime ball. Anne-Marie, let me ask you about former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, because she had some strong tweets yesterday, at least one tweet that I wanted to read to you. In it, she says, in part, you can't fire a prosecutor because you're unhappy he approved a search warrant that relates to your own conduct. Again, this was from the former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, who President Trump fired. I'm curious to get your thoughts on something. We tend to focus a lot on the possibility that President Trump may fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller. But in reality, would it be just as egregious to fire Rod Rosenstein?
Well, the reality is he can essentially fire any of them.
Yeah.
He is the head of the executive branch, and the DOJ reports into the president.
Right.
So he can get rid of Sessions, he can get rid of Rosenstein. There's some questions about whether there are some conflicts as far as Rosenstein was the one who actually wrote the memo saying Comey should be fired. Right. So if there's an obstruction of justice investigation around the fact that Comey was fired, then, and whether he should have been fired, then potentially Rosenstein may have to testify, which is a problem. Having him run an investigation, essentially, or oversee it, where he's actually somebody who could become a witness down the line.
But because up until this point, he would have known all the various aspects of the Mueller investigation to some extent.
Well, and he's the one who Mueller is reporting into, and he's the one who picked Mueller to be the special counsel and appointed him as special counsel.
So even his firing would be extremely significant, as Sally Yates has warned.
It certainly would be significant, but you know, the other thing that usually happens when a new president comes in is most of the top positions get replaced, and that didn't happen this time. It was he was left in that position. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see, you know, but the president certainly could do it if he wants to.
So, Evan, as you can imagine, all of this talk of firing, whether it is Rod Rosenstein, whether it's Bob Mueller, it has a lot of people on Capitol Hill nervous. And yet, despite all of that, we're not hearing too many Republican lawmakers say that they want to see some legislation to actually protect the Bob Mueller investigation and the special counsel. Take a listen to what Paul Ryan told my colleague Chuck Todd.
I don't think he should be fired. I think he should be left to do his job. And I don't think they're really contemplating this. It's not in the president's interest to do that. We have a rule of law system. No one is above that rule of law system. I don't think he's going to be fired. I don't think he should be fired.
Okay, so you're hearing the outgoing speaker, Paul Ryan, obviously with those strong words that he shouldn't be fired, the investigation should go on. But why are we not hearing more from GOP members to want to ensure that the Mueller investigation continues by putting legislation forth?
Well, first of all, we're on the verge of a potential constitutional crisis. If the president were to take any action against Rod Rosenstein or Robert Mueller or try to impede this investigation further, we would be in very serious, uncharted waters, and it would be the duty of the Congress to stand up. But why haven't Republicans
But it'll be too late by then, no?
It might be, but they still have the impeachment proceedings, which they would not do, at least until summer. We understand as Republicans that the Republican base isn't about the Republican Party anymore. 59% of Republicans say they're more loyal to Donald Trump, the man, than they are the party or the party ideology. So if you are a Republican congressman or senator who stands up to Donald Trump and says, no, this is a line you should not cross, you know what ends up happening? You end up getting a primary challenger who is supported by the base, and you get run out of office, and you'll get somebody who's even worse and more on the Trump train than somebody else. Look what happened to Jeff Flake. He's gone. Only people who are speaking up are the Charlie Dents, the Trey Gowdies, who are saying, yeah, these are lines that should not be crossed. Bob Corker as well. I think we need to see leadership that comes from people who are up for re-election.
Yeah, not those that are just simply walking away at the end of their term. All right, Aswin, let me ask you about Michael Cohen. He's expected to be in court tomorrow. He's hoping the judge will approve his restraining order to stop prosecutors from reviewing some of the material that was taken during the FBI raid on Monday. And he won't be alone in court. Take a listen to this.
Stormy Daniels is going to be in court on Monday with Michael Cohen. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, she will attend at 2 o'clock in New York on Monday. It's intended to send the message that this is a very, very serious matter for her, and she wants to make sure that the American people know that she's behind efforts to bring to light as much information and documents as possible.
So give us a sense, also, in how concerned the White House is about this particular story. There are some reports, in fact, that some of President Trump's advisors actually see the Cohen case as a bigger threat now than the Russia investigation.
I believe you're citing a New York Times report there, which actually correctly notes that many of Trump's advisors, both in and outside of the White House, do seem to agree that at least in the immediate future, this is more of an immediate threat, if not to Trump's presidency, to Trump himself, than the Mueller investigation, because of how much Michael Cohen knows and everything he's been involved with, and what potential dealings, whether untoward or not, that he most certainly has been deeply involved with over the past years and decades. And look, I spent some time talking and communicating with Michael Cohen. I and my former colleague Brandy Zadrozny at the Daily Beast wrote a pretty long profile of him a month or two ago. And I must say that out of Trump world is littered with like absolute abject sycophants. That's not a passing judgment here. That is just an objective truth to the situation. And I really, and I know this is a high bar to clear, I don't think I've ever encountered anybody so gleefully willing to hurl himself upon a grenade for Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, the way that Michael Cohen has certainly does. And Marie, let me ask you really quickly about another one of the president's tweets this morning, in which he said that he claimed attorney-client privilege was now a thing of the past. He also said all lawyers are deflated and concerned. As a former federal prosecutor, how do you analyze that president's accusation, that charge, with what you've seen in terms of how this case has developed?
Well, it's certainly very unusual to have an attorney's office raided by the FBI and have materials taken. And it is something that gives, I think, a lot of lawyers a moment of pause for thought to think, you know, that their files could be turned over at some point by court order to the FBI. So we don't know how much of it is attorney-client privilege. They're going into court tomorrow. The allegation by the government is that he actually was not acting most of the time as an attorney. So, and that he had no other clients other than Trump. Yeah. So the question is, if he was acting as an attorney, then the privilege hopefully will still be there.
Right.
But for the materials that are not covered by attorney-client privilege, those will be then ostensibly given to the government.
Evan, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that question as well, particularly with the charge that if he's hiding criminal activity, then attorney-client privilege doesn't.
Well, first of all, I want to point out the ridiculousness of Donald Trump saying that attorney-client privilege is dead, when Donald Trump Jr. went before investigators a few months ago and said he couldn't answer their questions on the Russia probe because he had attorney-client privilege with his father. There is no child-parent privilege. There's only spousal privilege and attorney-client privilege. But I think that Judge Kimba Wood, who is the Southern District of New York's judge who is presiding over this case, is an incredibly well-respected judge, and she is going to make sure that all parties involved adhere to the rule of law and that everything is done by the book. So
do you know if a decision will come out tomorrow, or it would be a few days afterwards, or what are the chances?
She's likely to take evidence and then make a decision after.
All right, guys, thank you very much. The Daily Beast, Aswan Subasang, former federal prosecutor, Anne Marie McAvoy, and GOP strategist Evan Siegfried. Great to have all of you with us this Sunday evening.